gender issues are not female issues. They're both male and female issues. But on the onset of the pandemic, we really would have emphasized more so, I must say, women inequalities or inequalities, these whole gender inequalities. And you would have seen from, well, I should say the elephant in your room, a lot of gender-based violence, domestic violence against women. We have seen, while we have made inroads in political leadership, women being head of state boards and being presidents and CEOs, there's still a lot needs to be done with regards to those areas. So political leadership, participation on boards, income levels, property ownership, labor participation, all these things still remain valid, right? These are issues that have been long before. We have made progress globally and locally, but as I said, there still remains a lot to be done in terms of that equality with regards to women. So we have women, getting involved in political leadership. We have seen Barbados, we have Maya Motley, we have, our very own Kamala Prasad, we have our president. So you have seen over the years and within recent years, last year and this year, you see a lot of women rising to the occasion. But according to the UN, we still have a long way to go. We really, I think the benchmark here is saying is, well, hopefully by 2030 we want to see a more momentum taking place. But however, they say about 130 years before really gender equality is really achieved. And as I said, on the women's side, on the female side, we have to do more in terms of, because you've seen with the pandemic, a lot of women are on the front line, healthcare workers, those who are really the healthcare fraternity, they're the ones on the front line, and women would have been impacted. So there's a lot of women who would have lost their jobs. They have been under severe stress. You have the whole issue of equal pay for equal work. That's still an issue. You have where women doing the same jobs as men, and yet still men negotiate differently to women. So those things, those long-standing issues still exist. However, on the male side, you have men, because how they are socialized, and these gender stereotypes and these patriarchal ideals, you find they sit themselves in a particular way. You find they're more confident, and sometimes in some cases they abuse their power. So there's where you find we have the discussion of violence against women. But it's been said as well that men have been also be violated as well. And the thing about it is, when you go to the police station, when they go to the police station, they're laughed at, they're ridiculed, because again, these gender stereotypes and how you socialize. Man suppose, hey, how many your wife beating you? How many girlfriend beating you? Go man sort it out. You're laughed at, you're ridiculed. So they're not allowed to, venture into that space where they can express themselves, express their emotions, deal with issues that are affecting them. As a result of that, they don't know how to channel those energies and feelings, and it comes out in a different way. You also have the issue where in certain households or certain relationships, you have women making more money than men, and then you find where women now abuse that situation, where now they figure they are seated in that power position, where they may find themselves humiliating the man, emasculating him, and those are some of the issues men have to deal with. So I think the approach really should be one of inclusivity, where we're dealing with gender issues, the conversation, we have to include men and women. I know the main thrust is for women to advance and be empowered and be confident and motivated, and we need to make those inroads in those certain areas that I would have identified before. But for a long time, we have been really advocating aggressively for women and in those areas. However, we need to start to include men, because if we don't try to address the issues that the men are facing, then it's always going to be one-sided. We're always treating it, just putting the plaster on the cut on one side, Well, that's very important. I mean, a lot of things that we can do, initiatives in terms of workshops, in terms of education, getting men more involved even in research in gender issues and understandings. It starts from being educated and being aware initially, and addressing the root issues, as I said, gender stereotypes and patriarchal ideals. It all starts from there, and changing the mindset and the culture, and understanding that having power doesn't mean you abuse the power, right? And having to relate to men and women in a healthy way, in a healthy environment, and recognizing and having respect for each other's value and each other's worth and what they bring to the table. And none should be more superior than the other. So it starts with education, it starts, I guess, with also advocacy, policy formation. All these things play a role and a part in terms of, getting the message out, changing mindsets and culture. Legislation has a great deal to play in that. It's very important for legislation to be a part of that whole conversation. It helps in terms of, as you say, creating that culture and that mindset. And once we create the environment and people start to adjust and understand, hopefully we have that behavior change taking place. I think women admire men's courage. Now, all these characteristics I'm going to outline, I just want to say that it should not be abused. Once it reaches a point where you're abusing these things, there is where you cross the lines and the boundaries. There's where the problem occurs. So I think women admire men's strength, their courage, the go-gettedness in some men who, they stop at nothing to get what they want, and in a healthy way, that is. The whole idea of being, I guess, a provider and a protector. These are some of the traits I think women admire in men. But of course, these things are not to be abused. And then we welcome the softer side, which I think some men shy away from, because when they think about being soft, like being compassionate and understanding and humble, they think it takes away from their masculinity, but it does not. What it does, it helps you to identify and relate to a woman and women's needs. And it plays a great part as well in the composition of the holistic being of a man. So those are basically some of what I would say. I 100% agree with that, because one of the things that women have been lobbying for, and feminist movements have been lobbying for, is that equal in terms of household and childcare responsibilities. As I said, it goes back to how you're socialized. Women are meant to be in the kitchen and to be in the house, to cook and do everything else, and the men could go out and work, right? But of course, things have evolved over the years, and you have seen where women are very independent, they have career-minded, they focus on career development, and I think they should have that opportunity to do so equally. So I think that shared responsibility is very important, to give both parties the opportunity to grow as an individual and advance their career as much as possible. Well, I will take the same position as the UN. It is a long road, but one step at a time, one day at a time. But as I said, the approach has to be one of including men and both women into the conversation. Policy and legislation, I say, plays a great role. For example, in Bahamas, quoting from Dr. Gabriel's Hosan article on Reality Check, she spoke about in Bahamas, a child's birthright is really based on the male and not the female, right? So there's things that still needs to be done with regards to those, what the government can do in terms of policy formation and legislation. For instance, let's take it locally in terms of transportation. We have seen where a lot of females have been kidnapped and raped recently over a period of time, and it continues today. Found dead, found raped, abused, and there's no transportation policy in place. So there's where the conversation is at, where the private sector is concerned. I know a lot of feminist movements and organizations have been lobbying and advocating for different things and having workshops and forum and that kind of thing, but we need to move from the talk into the action and really come together, both male and female entities, and really have that inclusive conversation. Well, to be honest, I think we would have made progress, to be honest with you. As I said, if you look around, a lot of females would have been have given the opportunity to be head of organizations, to sit on boards, and that, so progress have been made. But unfortunately, as I said, the COVID pandemic would have come and really emphasized a lot of the inequalities, and may have pushed us back a bit, unfortunately. And we need to start, to get back on that path and really continue momentum, because women would have really been affected more than men, because they take up the bulk of responsibilities, and that's reality, right? Women at home, whether you're a professional or not, and you have kids, you say about the kids, you have to come home, you have to cook, you have to. So it's a lot, right? So we need to understand what's happening, the impact that COVID-19 would have impacted women and their roles, and really take a good look in terms of how we can get back on that path, in terms of recovery. So women and organizations, women entities should be really, women and girls should be the center of the conversation where recovery is concerned, as well as decision making in going forward. I just want to emphasize that it's important to start that conversation with young boys. As I said, because a lot of what has been happening on the male side is because of these patriarchal ideas and gender stereotypes and how they're socialized. We need to start educating the younger boys, and it has to start from there, so they have that understanding, the education and the awareness, where we could try and see if we can change that mindset and those habits, and understand and create those better relationships between men and women. As well, I just want to plug in. I mean, it's interesting that I have this interview now, but we actually, AFETT, I should say, is hosting our 5th annual leadership forum. And we're actually, having conversations around all those things, really. So I encourage persons to join us on the 27th of November. 4 to 7. It's a virtual event, so look out for information on our Facebook page or Instagram, and and join the conversation. Let's chat, let's share. Yeah.